Alright, y'all, welcome to another episode of the Real Paint Talks PSC. So, trying something a little different today. Been doing a lot of in-office recording and filming for the masterclass, so it's been going super cool and it's been a lot of fun, and I've been adding a lot of different things into the filming and editing and stuff that's been really fun to play with. So a little bit of a different feel on this video. I am thinking that I'm going to start adding some of these podcasts to the masterclass just for a little extra something in there to really help with the overall goal of just, learning, teaching, and growing all at the same time. But today I wanted to chat about something that I was getting a lot of questions about, and it just kind of made me start to think a lot about it, because the answers I was giving were probably not what most people would think that would be the answer, because it really started to make me think. So what it was I was doing that big alder job, right? We're staining it and we're clear coating it. And one person on Instagram reached out and said, so why do you do 4 coats? What is it for? Why are you doing that? Is it for this? Is it for that? Why does it matter? Not in the sense that, oh, you're over it, nothing like that. But it really started to make me think about, well, the standard isn't 100% based on the cost. Sometimes you have to go over and above just for the simple fact of your values and standards. So that's kind of what this is kind of going to be mostly about, is values and standards. I have a certain standard that I have set, that I have kept in mind in terms of quality, how we want to present ourselves, how we want to run jobs. And that's super important to me, because it's not always just money that makes you do good, right? Quality isn't always just based off what you're being paid, So the 4 coats, there's a number of reasons that we do that. Well, for one, most importantly, we're building up millage, because you have to sand in between each coat. But if you burn through the clear and burn through the color on stained wood, it's very hard to fix. And if you really screw it up, you're fucked a little bit. So there's a reason why we're doing that many coats. With the solid pieces, it comes out super smooth on the second coat. With the veneers, on the big boxes and stuff like that, it's a little bit different. So yes, in one sense, we're building up millage. Now, if it was all solid, would I really need to do 4 coats? Probably not. I could probably get away with 2, but I would like to put 3. Because like I said, the standard and the values and our systems and the quality and how we portray ourselves isn't really based just off of money. It's based off of value and standard we've developed to keep our quality where we want it to be. It's a courtesy. So that's like when I talk about the red glazing, right? When I see a lot of people doing that, the red glazing thing. And I don't believe that people should be using it for some of the stuff that they're using it for. That's just me. But then people see me use it, and they're like, I thought you said you hated red. And it's not about that. It's about the courtesy. I've always, tried to teach people that you want to start with a very nice canvas with the least amount of foreign, products in there. Your substrate, your primers, your top coats. I don't like to have a whole layer of Bondo or red glazing skimmed in there for potential to, fail, right? But when people see us use it and there's so much of it, that's a courtesy. That's us searching for the damage, right? That's a standard that we've taken upon ourselves to provide. Because let's be real, this is how I think about it. Yeah, someone's probably not going to notice. Someone's probably the average eye isn't going to notice if I've done 1 or 2 red glaze checks. The average person isn't going to tell, oh, this is pretty smooth. Oh, you must have sprayed this 4 times. No, that comes down to the standard and the quality and the values that you want to provide to the job at hand. And then you can sort of use that to build up the structure for the sale on your company. But if you're pitching it that way and you're not doing it that way, it's a little bit shisty. But for us, the reason we do that, it's courtesy. It's the standard. I want it baby freaking smooth. And are there products out there that can probably do that in 2 coats? Probably. But for what we're doing, It's just the system we've developed is the system that works best for what we're doing right now. We've done all the R&D. We've tried all the experimenting. Like I said, I worked for two Polish dudes who we would always joke, we call it Polish engineering, because they were always trying to be more efficient, more productive. And sometimes you just realize the old way was the best way. There's been generations of people trying to figure this out. Yes, and you've heard me say in some podcasts, just because you have 30 plus years of experience doesn't mean you've been doing it right. You could be doing it wrong for the past 30 years. But you can't put aside all those years of somebody or a company seeing different scenarios and keeping that data. So that's what you got to figure out for yourself. But for us, it has nothing to do with price. It has nothing to do with speed. I've said this so many times in my other podcasts. We do not get paid to go fast. We get paid to do the job right. And like I've said, when it comes down to like figuring that out and your price and the job costing and stuff like that, you got to know, you got to dial into that. You got to figure that out for yourself and where you stand. Because like I said, so many companies out there right now are putting the cart before the horse. They want to charge all the way up here when they're still down here, So you can't just always be selling based off we're good, we're the best, like I've said so many times, right? And just for the record, if anyone ever hears me talk that way about certain products or this or that, I want you to know that most of the time, if you really think about it, I'm defending those products, right? I'm defending it because if this stuff is so good and it's the best and it's this and that, how can it be done poorly on poor substrates, and if it's like a cabinet refinishing thing, I think people say, well, that's the point, to take old crappy shit and make it more durable. Yeah, I get it, but just like auto body, you wouldn't put an amazing finish on something you've skimmed 1,000 times instead of just buying a new fender. So that's where the value and the standard comes into play, is like, what do you really want to give somebody? And I'm not really into that, but the defense of it is like, how can this stuff be so high end, so good, so this and that, so like all of these things, and then you can learn it in 2 days and go out there and partially implement it into your company, and then people start to do their own things and they start to create systems that they think are doing good, but they might not be. But that really does come down to the value and standards that they care about. I care about different things, and more, especially with the way social media is going nowadays, I have to constantly remind myself that there's levels to this shit. Everyone has their place, and sometimes what people see me do isn't going to be the same as what they're doing, and vice versa. And sometimes you just have to stick to the vision, right? Stick to the vision, and that's what's important. But the reason I want to talk about this in terms of values and standards is because, like I said, we don't get paid to go fast. We do the extra code if it's needed. If I feel something and it's not where I need it to be, then I put that extra code. I make it so it represents what we're selling, right? Cutting corners, sometimes you have to do it. It really depends on where you are, what you're doing, what you want to make, all the variables and situations that you're put up against, right? So, you really have to understand where to cut corners if you need to cut corners, And I learned that even every day in new home construction, when you're having workers work for you, when you're having deadlines, when there are budgets, when there's things where you're like, some stuff has to sort of not slide, but you have to either be good enough to keep up, to keep it to the quality, or some stuff, let's see if it gets tagged. I know that sounds shisty. That's why I'm always telling people to hone in on your craft, right? Don't price jobs because of the lack of skill to compensate, right? That's what I'm seeing a lot too. So it's like, I know that if I'm giving somebody a deal or I have a schedule or this or that if if we come together as a crew, we can still crush it because we're highly skilled. That's what I put my value and standards on, is the skill level. So when people say, like, did you really need to do 4 coats? I mean, maybe not, but some of it was a little rough. Do I just leave it? Like, it's all got to be consistently where I want it to be. It's a value and standard that we've set over the years, right? And like I said in the last podcast, y'all, the perfect one. Who do we think we are to think that we're so amazing that people might see what you see. Most times they don't. So how you go about cutting your corners and stuff like that is really going to come down to the value and standards that you want to hold. I don't really like to steal candy from a baby, even though it's super easy, but that's subjective. It's to each their own. But like I said, it is the value and standard that we present. Because when you think about it in the long run, it's actually better to do it that way, in my opinion. It's just to keep a consistent reputation going, as opposed to being hit and miss all the time. Like, you can hear it sometimes, at least where I am in the community. It's like, well, that company's pretty good, but sometimes they're here, sometimes they're there, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. The one beautiful thing that we have is consistency. It's the consistency for us to know how to do these jobs properly. Like I said, we're selling more trust, right? The trust of knowing that if they need to do one more code, if they need to put in extra time, if they need extra help, that they're going to do it because they're up here, and that's the standard and quality that they hold. And that's what you're really selling sometimes, is the trust. Because I know I've said this before, you can't just trust or sell that we're the best, we use the best products. Okay. And if someone takes you up on that, you better be able to perform. And you also need to be able to say, like, hey, why'd you take so long? Like, it took you like an extra week. Well, because it needed what it needed. It takes the time that it takes, right? And if you have to be pushed, then you have to have the skilled laborers to help you get it done, right? There's nothing more stressful than being on a timeline and really seeing like, oh man, we're not going to make it because we're not actually that fast yet. And that's okay, but it's know your worth, right? We know where we stand. I know what it costs for me to do the work. So putting an extra coat sometimes, is it worth it? Yes. Sometimes we say like, this is good. Yes. But you have to know that value and standard has to be there, because it's going to come with every single sector of this. Demographics, public demographic, commercial, industrial, kitchen repainting, new home construction, production. It all is going to come back to, a number of things on how you want to run it, where you want to be, how you want to do it, and what you value. I didn't value volume, because I don't strictly 100% value just money, right? If I solely value just money, then I would have 5 or 6 custom home builders, or 5 or 6 builders, or 5 or 6 contracts where I'm constantly just making this money and I'm smiling, you're getting that mailbox income, but that's not 100% something that I think is practical and a reality with the city I'm in and some of the work that we're doing. It's very high end, and it's meticulous, and they're high maintenance. Not to say that they're bad people, by absolutely no means. It's a high maintenance game. Remember, painting is all maintenance. So that's another thing based on the 4 coats. I like to build up millage. I'm using like still pre-cats and stuff, and think and say what you want, but pre-cat, once it's dry and you put another coat, and most lacquers will build up on top of each other, and you're getting this very, very, you're getting layers of protection in there. So some of the products I see nowadays where people are like, oh, it's like one prime, one top coat, well, it's better for maintenance. Well, for me, I don't really understand that, but at the same time, I'm not using some of those products. I know that for me, the more you build up millage, the more body you give it, the more protection it has. You have to be careful sometimes depending on the products that you don't overdo the millage. But for us, we just like to keep sanding until it's freaking smooth. Make it white, spray it, make it smooth. Sand it, make it white, spray it, make it smooth. And all the while being careful, because like I said, with staining, if you burn through the clear in color, you're a little bit hooped, right? So it's very, very strategic when it comes to stain jobs. And I'm going to have a full class just on that. It's in the making right now, but I'm going to have a full class. I might make it available that if people just want to get just those videos for the staining classes, that's something I'm going to try and work at in doing. But for now, I'm just putting it all together and then figuring out, how to get it to everyone. So, but like I said, when it comes to staining, we build up millage, right? And that really comes down to us and our choices. Do we have to put 4 or 5 coats? Sometimes we do. For some things, yes. Especially on the hairy veneered pieces. Sometimes you just have to. It depends on the substrate of wood too. A lot of woods, they're porous, so they soak in the clear a little bit more. They soak in these products. Sometimes you have to put the extra coat if you're at that standard, right? And it comes with the people that I work with. A lot of times, like, dude, like, this is good. And I'm like, yeah. It's like, really, man? It's like, okay, this is good. Other times it's like, this is in a high traffic area. People are probably going to touch this. They're going to see this. Straighten that line out. Do this. Make that a little smoother. Make that cleaner. Because this is the thing that differs from what we're doing than a lot of people out there, is we have punch out lists. And yes, most people have punch out lists, but we have a punch out list in a different style because we're servicing these jobs to the max. So sometimes we're there at the closeout, we do the touch up, we get the punch out list, 1 year, 3 year, and sometimes 5 year, right? So you really need to understand where to save what needs to be like, no, we need to do that now, because if that gets caught in the end, it's harder to fix then. So we always keep our standard high, so our punch list is next to 0. Most of the time, our punch list consists of trade damage. It's never really paint failures or paint fuck-ups. We get that stuff then and there. Because I like to, and I've said this before, I like to put an extra time in the beginning, not rush the beginning to save time in the end. Like, I'm not all about quickly get there and service it in the end. No, I'm the opposite. Take our time in the beginning, get it done right, get it done what we can do. If there is timelines and schedules, we get it to 98% amazing. And then if there's anything that comes in the end, if it's from us, we know, oh, it's minimal. Oh, shoot, we just missed that little baseboard right there. Oh, shoot, we forgot to take some tape off there. Stuff like that. But not like, oh, man, this whole building is screwed. Oh, man, look at all the chunks of shit in this wall we rolled out. Like, oh, man, this ceiling hump. Like, there's many variables to it when it comes to new home construction. But all that information has helped me figure out, where's my standard? Where do I sit? Why am I putting in the extra effort? Because that stuff matters, but it comes down to the values and standards that you hold and that you want to provide. And that's gonna, that's based on the business model and what you're doing and how you want to run it. I've never been into, the splash and dash kind of game, and there's no judgment there. If that's what you specialize at and you make bank at that, okay, everybody has their place, right? I don't really blame that on the trades. I kind of blame it on the clients, right? Because not everybody wants a high-end paint job. Not everybody can afford it. But sometimes there's people that can afford it that are just cheap and they just want cheap. And that ends up burning them. Well, here's a good example. So a friend of mine, love them. They're amazing people. Never any hard feelings, never. They bought their first house. They had somebody paint it. They didn't go with my quote in the beginning. Fair. They're consumers, right? It's their hard-earned money. Fair game. But that company didn't do what they thought they were going to do. It wasn't what they expected. They didn't meet the client's expectations, right? And they said to me later down the road when we hang out, yeah, man, I wish I would have gone with you. It's like, yeah, man, shit happens. I'm a consumer. I get it. I cannot be mad at anyone. I get it. But then, years go on and years pass and they're going to build a new house, right? So they know that I'm probably more expensive than most. So they don't ask me to quote it. And I'm okay with that. And my buddy even said, do you want to put it on it? I'm like, dude, like, if you have your own builder and he's got a painter and you trust it, like, just go that route. It's less headaches. It's like, let's that, right? But then they reach out one day and they say, hey, we got a couple paint quotes. Do you think you could look them over for us and just see, like, give us some guidance? Okay. And then it was like, well, do you also want a quote on this? I'm like, well, do you want me to? Because I know before it's like, we might not always meet budgets. Yeah, quote on it. It's cool. So I quote it, but I don't send it over to the builder right away because I don't know the guy and I don't really want him to have my pricing. So I just reach out to my friends and I say, I say to them, okay, listen, I've looked over the other prices. I have my price. I want to talk about it all before it looks like I'm just coming in like a crazy bastard over top of them. And I don't want it to make it look like I'm making these companies look bad, right? So you had one on a low end, one in the middle, and me on the higher end, right? So now the point of this is the value. What do you value, right? These folks valued their dollar but in a way where they didn't want to overpay for something that they couldn't always foresee. And I understand that, because sometimes it's hard to pay for something when we really don't know what's going to happen, especially when it comes to building a house. There's a lot of shit involved, and there's a lot of scheduling, there's a lot of trades, there's a lot of things that have to be paid, and a lot of, dealing with a builder. So I can totally understand. But the problem was I didn't know the companies and I didn't know their systems. All I knew was what they were using, how they quoted it. They showed it to me. They didn't tell me the names of the companies. Fair. I don't want to know. But to come and turn around now and me be like, okay, well, how do I help you, assess these estimates? Mine was too much. They didn't want to go for it. Fair. But now, okay, one's 39,000, one's 50 some thousand, right? So let's just keep it for, easy math sakes. One was 40,000. One was 60,000, because I think one was like 54 and one was like 39. So that's like 40 and 60. Okay, so the $20,000 difference in there. How do you pitch that to a client or a builder or the public demographic so they can see the value in paying more? Most people have no idea about paints and products, and if you're pitching them on the best, that doesn't matter. The value and standard is what matters. So they would really love to go with us because they know that we're going to be there, we're punctual, we're going to get it done, it's going to be good, but they have to pay a premium for that. Now they start to think to themselves, well then, I don't know. Well, I still trust this builder and his painter. Okay, well, what do you think, Danny? I'm like, honestly, don't go for the lowest one. You would want to go for the middle one. But then the middle one started having things in the details where it was like, pre-cat lacquer on exterior fiberglass doors, stuff like that. And those are the red flags that I start to say, I'm like, watch out for this, watch out for that. But once again, the value and standard, it started to make me think, like, how do they justify it? It's really hard. And the reason I'm saying this is because sometimes it just comes down to you just doing what you know is right and holding and standing your ground. And that's the same as them. That's them saying like, well, I don't understand how $20,000 more on this company is going to be different than this company, until you sometimes burn to learn. But look, they might not. They might get exactly what they wanted and they would have saved $20,000, or saved, even the $20,000 from me, because I was probably about that, right? $20,000 more than the middle person, right? But my point is that all that stuff, the competing and like, oh, do you want this? This is what we do. This is what we charge. This is why. This is how I have to justify it. And in that situation, it was a little different because they were working with a builder that I didn't know, right? So I don't know how the scheduling is going to go. I don't know how the system is going to go. I don't know if I'm going to get trade stacked or not. And how do I justify my price and doing a good job? And the only way I can do a good job is if I have my time, if it's clean, if it's thought about, if there's a clean line of communications with the contractor, the builder. That stuff's important. So I had to stick to my guns, and I'm really hoping that they went with the middle and they're using my advice and they're just keeping track and checking off the boxes and going and seeing what they're paying for, right? Because value and standards really come down to the individual. It's subjective. I don't care if I could get away with 2 coats. If I see that the 3 coats puts me to a standard that I'm still okay with, okay, fine, great. But 4 coats is going to be one more added layer, right? So really it comes down again to that time aspect. People are like, well, who has time for that? Well, I don't know. Have you ever pulled out a stopwatch? That sounds crazy, right? But I've done it. I've pulled out a watch and been like, how long does it actually take to caulk this built-in? How long does it actually take to paint this ceiling? How long does it actually take to sweep that fucking floor? Is sweeping faster than vacuuming? Is this that? Like, you have to know that a little bit so you can kind of figure out, like, people are like, dude, you're going to put a whole nother coat on this? Yeah, it's going to take 20 minutes. Oh, yeah, I guess. It kind of felt like it would take like an hour or so. Okay, and even if it took an hour, right? Like, even if you're paying someone $100, it was a $100 extra for you to get peace of mind out of the whole job to keep your standard there. Value. Where are you investing it? What's important? And to us, the standard is more important than cutting the corner or worrying about what other people think, right? There is going overboard. I said that in the perfect podcast, y'all. There is going overboard. And it's a constant struggle with me and my crew because the profit margins. Where do you want to be? Can you make some? Can you make some more? Are you losing some? Really, it really comes down to what do you want, right? But I've dialed my jobs and contracts in so cleanly that I know, fuck, one more hour of me putting an extra coat on this, that's a huge investment for the long run for me, because I know it's peace of mind. And then if someone ever asks, like, how many coats you put on this? And it's like, we put this many, they're like, whoa, damn. I see that as a selling feature for what I'm doing. But remember, y'all, it all comes down to standards and values of what you want. But the reason we do that is, like I said, for a number of things. We want to build body. We want to protect it. We have to sand between each coat, and that's how we get it really, really glassy smooth. And it's a courtesy. It's a peace of mind courtesy, knowing that you're getting more than what's expected, and it'll be good for you. It'll be good for the whole job, right? So that's that. That's why I wanted to come on and talk about that, because it really does come down to values and standards. There isn't really any other specific reason that we do it other than we have to, and we want to, because it provides a standard that's what we're selling. And like I said, it's a little different when it comes down to solid color, or if it's like walls and ceilings, Well, actually, not really. Like if you roll out a wall on that third coat, like say you're on a third coat and you roll out that wall and it looks like shit, sometimes you got to roll it out again, and it really depends. If it's like, oh, fuck, man, they're not paying us for that. Okay, well, if it gets caught in the end and you get called back on it, are you going to lose more that way, or are you going to gain more by saving the time now and service it in the end? It's just a formula that you have to figure out on your own. For us, I don't want tags, because what tags do sometimes, and what's bad about like trying to cut corners and people being able to see and catch that stuff sometimes, is that the number one rule in new home construction is sometimes when people find something, they start looking for everything else. Super dangerous. Like, could you imagine having all these tags, like in those videos you see where there's like thousands of fucking tags because somebody saw one thing and like, oh, well, now we have to go look at it all. Because some people are like that. And that's kind of why I like working for the builder, because there's a middleman there, and it's that company is selling you too. So the clients don't always have to worry, oh, I'm working with this builder, they have these trades, we know it's going to be good. And it comes back to the accountability between trade and builder for people to make sure they're all on the same line. Oh, like, no, this isn't good enough, or, well, this is all we do, this is what we charge, so there's variables in there, big time variables, but it comes down to those values and standards. But it comes down to those values and standards and what you want to provide and what you're okay sleeping with at night, knowing, I hated it sometimes when you're thinking about like, oh man, is somebody going to catch that? Oh my God, what if somebody catches that? Like, what do you mean if somebody catches that? Like, well, we don't have enough time to kind of get it to where it needs to be. And it's like, well, dude, we kind of got to fix that, like, we don't want that. It's like, well, yeah, but look what they left us to deal with. So now we have to try and fix this stuff. I don't think they're going to give us more. Well, have you tried to ask for more? Well, I don't know if I really want to ask for more because the budget's already so tight and the schedule's and it's like, well, dude, we can't really leave that. What do you do? Right? That's where the value and standards come down to. Like, what is it that you're trying to provide? Where do you sit? And what are you selling? And for us, we're always selling a high quality standard. And whatever that means nowadays, but like, I'm sure a ton of people are like, why are you still using freaking pre-cat? And it's like, but remember, values, it's subjective. There's so many differences in this game. There's so many variables, I should say. So if people see what I do and they're like, that's not going to hold up, it's subjective. Remember, I see my jobs 1, 3, and 5 years. And painting is all maintenance. I could destroy the shit out of 2K freaking epoxy, like really, like I could. And you know, it's painting is maintenance. Like the hardest coatings, like you can still damage this shit, right? Like I said, if I can key my fucking car, I can key your fucking kitchen, you know. So you're gonna be able to do the same shit to my work, right? It's about maintenance though. But you can see that's why I like going to the services, because I start to see, okay, this is the failure, this is that, what gets touched the most. And I hate to say this, in new home construction, when people talk about, oh, the skin, the oils from your skin and the hands, like, you need to use this on your kitchen. And I'm like, well, what about the nasty fucking frames beside the, like, the light switches in like the kids' bedrooms, or the frames the teenage boys grab onto when they're walking through the house, or the frame grandma and grandpa put their hand on every time they come into the door and take their shoes off. This is another thing. Our people are not thinking clearly. They're like this because it's just what I need, what I want, me. Like, your hand oils get on so many other places in your house. You know, like, so it really comes down to variables. So that's why going back to be able to see these things, I start to see, okay, what is it that we really need to hone in on, dial in. And then we can see, okay, well, we're already doing all those things. Great. We just saved ourselves a shitload of time because we've kept our value and standards high. You know, do you want to start down here and start being, okay, we got to get better at this. No, don't do that anymore. Don't do that anymore. And yes, gradually over time, you figure that out. We had to figure it out too. But it also comes down to mentorship and like keeping an open mind, not getting in your own way, and keeping your data and paying attention to what you're doing and what you're providing, right? Because that's what I did. And I found, like, this is where I want to be. No, I don't really want to do that. Oh, okay, in the end, like, oh, hey, remember that thing? Man, nobody pointed it out. And it's like, oh, man. Well, shit. Well, it still looks good. And it's like, it's good, but it's like, I thought it was going to be this. Oh, okay, so next time we got to remember it. Yes, next time. Keeping the thought track, like the thought process there all the time. Like, think about what you're doing. If you're just painting to pay the bills and you don't really love it that much, these are the things that are going to bite you in the ass. Because if you're not premeditative about this stuff, I mean, like, okay, watch for that, so this doesn't happen, so that doesn't happen. And when you're in, like, large luxury new homes, you don't want those mistakes. But imagine if you were in, like, a mass square footage where you're painting a huge commercial building and you make one little mistake that fucks up so much shit and you got to redo that. It's coming out of your pocket. So that's why honing in on your craft and knowing what the fuck you're doing is more important than the best product. Know what the fuck you're doing, because if you're good from the ground up, you can paint almost anything with any product. All that stuff is irrelevant after, right? Because that's how you really hone in on your value and standard. It's like, okay, I know because of the data I have that, yes, we should be using 2K because we do 90% of our work as kitchens. Okay, we should be honing in on this because we know that, you know, this mat on the ceiling works better than that mat. Is a little more expensive, yes, but we know it's going to save us time here or there. Or it's like, no, fuck it, cheap out. It's not in the budget. It's not this. It's not that. You need to be a really good negotiator if you play it that way. Because if you get called out for shit in the end, you got to know how to talk yourself out of it. And just saying, well, it wasn't in the budget doesn't always work, right? So really, guys, establish your values, your standards, where you want to sit. The reason we do extra coats, the reason we go the extra mile is because we truly believe that that is something that I would want in my house. So that's what I give to someone in their house. And I know that I can afford it because I know my numbers, I know the data, and I know where I sit. And that's what helps us keep our standard high. But you can't put the cart before the horse and just go out there and sell it. We're buying finished specialists. Okay, that's what everybody says. Let's see, right? And yeah, having the reviews and having the data, right? But it really comes down to the values, the standards, and the systems that you can provide. In a nutshell, do it fast, service it in the end, or create a nice canvas from the beginning, take your time, and you'll save time in the end. And I truly think that's the better way to do it. But like I said, it comes down to the value and standards of what you're really trying to provide. And I know, because I know my business model, that putting that extra coat for the courtesy and peace of mind that people are going to get a little bit better than the next is really what I'm about. I know I'm not going to compete here and be like, oh, that company does 5, we better do 6 coats. No, the standard comes down to you. right? Your business model, what you're doing. So if you see me do like 4 or 5 codes and you're like, Jesus Christ, that seems overkill, remember variables. If it's something that you see value in, going the extra mile, then you should do it. But if you're not being paid to do that and your business model is different, just be smart about it. But like I said, there's levels to this shit. Everybody has their place, and I've put myself to where I want to be. So sometimes you just got to do that for yourself too, right? All right, y'all. So I made this one a short one. I just wanted to talk about this because I thought it was super important, and values and standards and what they provide. But I got lots more in the work. I said I've been doing a ton of filming for this class and all the classes, and I got a ton of videos already in the works. I just have to have them edited, and then we're going to start doing a lot more on-site filming, and now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty stuff. The stuff that I've been doing right now has been mostly in-office stuff. The stuff not putting the cart before the horse, that's super important. We're starting with foundations and basics, but now we're going to really start getting into like tools, machines, finishes, how I do things, how I can help show you how to do things that might help your system, because it's not going to be exactly the same. I might do something a little bit different than you, but I've learned the foundations over the years, the principles and the foundations that I stood on to help grow my skills so I could know exactly what I'm providing. And these are the types of skills and tips and tricks that I think will really help anyone. You know, there's been data, there's people that I've helped that have gone and used, you know, the systems and the teachings that I've given them, and they've made huge waves with it. Like, if I had people be like, dude, even my builder like realized, like, what the hell did you do different? And that makes me smile. That makes me so happy to know that there is 1,000 ways to skin a cat, but there are basic principles to this shit. And I just want to help teach that if I can to anyone that wants it, and maybe they can implement it into their systems and their business to lay down finer finishes, more beautiful jobs, be more consistent, because that's what it's all about, to help create values and standards that you can stand on and live by to help you grow your company to be profitable, right? Much love, y'all. Real Paint Talks PSC. Love y'all.